All right, we're live.
We are live.
Back.
What episode is it now?
Episode 4.
Episode 4
right.
of the Entertainment Business Review with your boy Brian.
Boy Jordan. That's right.
So, I think this was kind of a slow week for entertainment business, so to speak.
Yeah, to a certain extent, yeah.
Yeah. But there was... I did read about the some of the leadership shifts in Hulu.
Yeah, so let's intro it. So here are the topics we're going to talk about in this episode. So pretty slow, but from a business standpoint, they were interesting things. So the first is Kelly Campbell, who was the head of Hulu, has left and is joining Peacock.
Competitor.
A direct competitor.
Mm-hmm.
Not as powerful at all, but interesting things to think about with that deal in terms of the nature of what's going on at Disney and Hulu, and pretty much just that. Good luck to her at Peacock.
I mean, she's going to be fighting an uphill battle.
Yes, good luck with that. Then we'll talk about Game of Thrones. Just launched or just released their new trailer for the prequel, so we'll talk about that. Talk about the nature of kind of reimagining or doing a spin-off of a successful show. Then we're going to talk a little bit about Squid Game. Obviously, we got to bring that up. That's like the big story that's pretty much on everybody's mind these days. But from our standpoint, kind of the interesting thing is like what made this so huge. Because this is like particularly unique, not only particularly unique, but something that I wasn't necessarily confident could happen in this day and age. So interesting point there. We'll talk a little bit more about what that means for Netflix moving forward. And then lastly,
some recommendations.
I finally, some recommendations. I finally got to watch Free Guy, so I want to talk about it.
All right, so this Kelly Campbell situation.
All right, so I'll give you the context. So Kelly Campbell came in about 4 years ago, I believe. Charged of pretty much running Hulu. At the time, Disney... it was still owned a little bit by NBC Universal, and was that before the 21st Century Fox deal?
I think
or the Fox deal. So it was still triply owned. So it was pretty much its own entity, and it always had been for a while. So I think we just came in. She was like, "Okay, cool. I get to run Hulu. It's pretty much its own separate thing. We just like have random people invested in us, but we pretty much just run ourselves."
Yeah.
And then the Disney deal came. Recall Disney bought Fox. A majority of Fox, a lot of Fox, which included their stake in Hulu. So it's mainly owned by Disney, and then NBC is now like, all right, like whatever, fuck it.
Yeah, I remember
there was just giving it to them.
There was a lot of like corporate takeover type shenanigans that were going on that essentially allowed Disney to take majority ownership. Like there was some other kind of like trading and like forcing NBC to like let go of their share.
Oh yeah,
like, there was a lot of that. And
I'm not surprised by that.
Yeah, and then ultimately Disney won, basically. So that's how they got control.
Well, I think it was because, it must have. I think the deal was like they were going to sell their stake in like 2023 or 2024, and I think Disney did what you were talking about, and they're just like, dude, we're going to leave this in like screw it, just like we'll pay to buy you out, kind of thing.
Yeah, and
so
then
we can just run
fast
Hulu
forward
ourselves.
To after they bought it. And then what did they do after that?
So now they pretty much own it. And so there's been a lot of... Hulu has always had a pretty unique culture. Like they call themselves the hooligans, and they're pretty creative driven. They've really valued really interesting ideas. And I think in ideas and content, and you can tell, like if you look at the type of stuff that they have on Hulu, it's actually really, really good content, honestly. From an original standpoint, FX is on there, and FX is a really good brand. They have a lot of good stuff.
It's premium series and premium stuff.
Yeah, it's very good, honestly. It's very on par with some of the top tier stuff.
Yep.
But it never really gained traction. I don't really know. I couldn't really pinpoint why. But it just never really blew up to Netflix level.
Yeah, I think that's scale. I think a lot of that is scale.
Probably scale. They couldn't really do much because they were owned by three different organizations, so they couldn't really do what they wanted because they needed approval from everybody, so they were kind of limited. But in the context of this story, Kelly came in and thought this is what she was getting. She was getting this company owned by three corporations, but she was going to be able to run it herself. Now, fast forward to now, where Disney has pretty much taken over Hulu. And I don't necessarily know what that means. I know the Disney culture is not super dope.
That's putting it pretty lightly.
Yeah, it's not as like it's like very much the opposite of the brand image they portray to the mainstream.
Isn't that so ironic?
It's very ironic.
So like this family brand, and then everyone that works there is like, oh yeah, the culture is so cutthroat.
Yeah, it's very cutthroat. They don't pay a lot. I know for a fact they don't pay a lot. And
they pay in the happiness that they have.
That is what they honestly. That is kind of what it is, though. Like they honestly, they're like you work for Disney, you have that brand on your resume.
Yeah.
So we don't like you're willing to take the Disney premium.
Do you want to take a job that pays you more, or the happiest place on earth? Come on, you make the choice.
It's crazy. So it's so you get underpaid, and then Disney is just overall the corporate structure is. I mean the culture and the structure is just awful. I've heard not good things about management. Not in that they're like competent, is that they're just assholes. I've just heard like they're just like not good people there. So and then Bob left. Bob Iger, who is the greatest executive to ever live. So he's left.
Charismatic executive.
He's just the best. And I don't know much about Bob. I think he was put in a bad spot. But either way,
Hulu just got strung along the Disney plan, basically. They weren't given any flexibility. They didn't have any agency. They're not even part of Disney's international plan that's like in Stars. So they're kind of just like the orphan child in that they didn't really care about.
No. And now it's becoming a weird thing too now, because Hulu is basically turning into Disney's streaming arm. So like Disney's moving all their stuff to their office in Santa Monica, and like that's supposed to be DMED, Disney Media, whatever the acronym is supposed to stand for. I forget.
The distribution.
Direct to I don't know. It's called DMED.
DMED, yeah.
But DMED is basically their arm that's all streaming related and distribution specifically, because now it's more complicated when you create a movie. It used to just be okay. This distribution method is easy. You throw it into theaters, you have the 3-month window, then it goes to airplanes, then it goes to this, then it goes to like cable, then it goes to streaming. It wasn't that complicated. Now it's like, is this a streaming movie? Is this a theater movie? And if so, how long is that going to be? Because that's not like set in stone now.
Yeah. Well,
so the situation is a lot harder. So now they have a whole department of tech people basically making these decisions. Yeah. And they're like, they went into Hulu and basically like, you're going to listen to us now.
Yeah. I think the interpretation that that Hollywood essentially took from that was it's no longer the studio creatives that are coming up or pushing the ideas out. It's the DMED people saying, what should we have on the platform and where, and then that will lead to content decisions, which is the reverse of what it used to be. But
so bad for the industry.
Yeah, and that's I
hate that. It's so bad for creativity.
She probably didn't say this, but that's probably one of the reasons why she probably left. But in my mind, though, I wonder how much better it will be at Peacock, where she's going.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I would guess that a good reason she left was part of that, and I think it's a part of like she probably thought that she was going to be able to make a lot of executive decisions on content and how things were going to be released, how that platform was going to run, and Disney basically came in and said like, you can have some power in certain things, but like it's ultimately going to come down to like what we want. And I think that's not what she signed up for. She's like, I want actual full control over the content that goes in here, etc. To be fair, though, and what would counter my point is that like I don't know if she's getting that much different at Peacock. I guess she's not competing like for another streaming platform. Like it's all the streaming stuff.
Remember, she's not going to like NBC Universal. She's going specifically to Peacock. So I feel like she had a background at Google and then at Hulu, so she has like this tech media background that she's probably taking over to Peacock. So
yeah,
maybe she'll fit. Like
she'll probably fit. Whether she'll be able to fix Peacock and make it a viable streaming platform is probably not going to end up happening. Yeah, I think we all know.
Walking a fine line there.
I feel like Peacock and Paramount Plus are just like the dog that you like is like is really old and you just like you got to take it out into the backyard and shoot it and you're like
they're suffering from sunk cost fallacy. They put so much into it and they're kind of like, oh, we have to keep like if we pull out now, then we just wasted all this investment and they're not profitable yet.
Well, the thing is that's the only in the new world, that's like their only means of profitability, though. Like they have to go into streaming, or else what else do they have? I mean, they have the linear channels, but that's going to die eventually.
Yeah.
So they really needed to go into streaming platforms to remain a business. I'm just
Yeah.
not confident Viacom and NBC Universal is going to remain. Well, NBC Universal maybe differently. Viacom, CBS probably not, but NBC Universal still create a lot of good studio content that they actually like, you know, send out to other streaming platforms. So they might become more of an arms dealer like Sony. But they also have the theme parks,
Yeah.
which are huge and pretty profitable. So
At
they
some
won't
point,
die.
They will have to
But
choose.
I think they'll be bought.
Well, good luck to Kelly.
Yeah. Good luck with
See how
that.
that goes.
Yeah.
So in other news, the Game of Thrones new trailer.
Yeah.
I was really looking forward to that. Like when it popped up like on #1 trending on my YouTube, and I like watched it, I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
This is gonna be good.
don't
What
know.
did you think of it, first of all?
Well, I mean, I think it looks cool. I think it looks good. The trailer itself like gave me optimism, but trailers have also deceived me in horrible ways.
Yeah. Is it D&D
so-
who's also doing this one?
I don't think so, which
It's-
gives
it's
me hope.
not.
Which gives me hope.
Is it really? Like they did that bad that they're like, okay, this property is no longer yours.
Well, I don't think it's necessarily that HBO kicked them out. I think they wanted to do other stuff. Like, I think that was the whole reason why we went to like 6-episode seasons, 8-episode seasons by the end. Because I honestly think D&D were like, we want out of this shit. I think they wanted out of it. And so they were speeding up. They were originally supposed to do Star Wars after Game of Thrones, and then that didn't happen.
Okay. So it is House of the Dragon, created by Thrones author J.R. Martin.
Did he write it?
Yeah, I guess so. And co-creator with Ryan Condal, who's serving as a showrunner of a series with Miguel Sapochnik. Okay, guys that I don't know, but
All
hey,
right.
D&D's not on there, so they can't fuck it up now.
I am. I have optimism knowing that George R. R. Martin is involved.
Right.
To be fair, I was recently watching Harry Potter, and I was just thinking, I was like, isn't it great that J.K. Rowling started a story and actually finished it? Isn't that like awesome? Which George R. R. Martin didn't do,
hasn't done yet.
and I still don't think he knows how to end it. Like, I'm just like I literally was just like thinking about Harry Potter. I'm like, what if like she actually committed to a story and finished that shit?
Well, she finished it.
Like, and
Oh,
finished
actually,
it beautifully.
the movies were coming out as she was finishing it, right? So I guess it's kind of a similar situation.
The books came out, I think, like it was like 3 or 4 years before the last movie. Like the last book came out like a couple years before the last movie.
Yeah.
So, but it was
I
like
think,
kind of on the same.
I think what happened was their deal with D&D was like, all right, you guys can film it because I'm not a very fast writer, but I'll tell you the plot line of what it is, and you guys just fill it out. So he gave.
Oh,
him,
you don't
like,
know the story?
No, I do know the
Yeah,
story,
yeah.
but he basically just gave the plot line, and then they just went off with it. So I think he probably like is thinking like, okay, they fucked it up so bad. Like, should I go back to the original storyline?
I think he's done.
Or is he like trying to do something else? Like it may have
No,
been so bad
he's not
and
trying to
left
finish it.
such terrible taste in his mouth that he's like, all right, I'll just do something new now.
For George?
Yeah, for George. Like
Yeah.
the only other thing I can think of is that they're gonna redo it just as like an additional money grab for it, like a further way to.
Well, this is what
monetize
this
that.
is. I think this is what I think the prequels are. I think it's a
This
money
is the
grab.
whole- I think it's the whole is over, right?
Yeah, and maybe it works. Like I hope it works. I mean, like honestly, I was obsessed with Game of Thrones at the time.
Yeah. As
Um,
was I.
So I think everybody was, and it was great. It was a glorious time. Like Sundays were the best.
Yeah.
Like I looked forward to it all week.
Yep.
So I hope it turns into that show. I'm not convinced it's going to turn into that show because I just
Yeah.
Game of Thrones
is
was
a
just
big-
so different, just so awesome.
This is a big two fingers crossed moment.
Yeah,
For me.
Yeah. But I'm glad that D&D aren't in it because I'm just not convinced. There are certain people in Hollywood that I'm not convinced are good storytellers. They're good at adapting things to the screen. I think that just those are totally different skill sets.
Yeah.
And I think it's very
Execution versus creative is different.
yeah. Like so D&D like they were great at what like George R. R. Martin wrote and then made it into screen and it was great. After a terrible pilot, they figured it out, and then George R. R. Martin kind of screwed them because I think they thought, like J.K. Rowling, Like J.K. Rowling, I think was at like book 4 when they started filming the movies, and she kept going. And then so the books and the movies kind of synced. It was beautiful. But I think D&D thought like, hey, George R. R. Martin will first finish the books and we'll adapt the books and it'll be fine. And they got to the 5th, 6th season, like, George, hey, what's up, dude? And he's like, nah, you guys can figure it out. It's fine. You
totally
screwed them.
Yeah.
And they're not good. They're not good story. They're clearly not good story writers, which is that's fine. Most people are pretty bad at that.
I think people actually are a lot more critical of them. They're like, oh, these guys are hacks.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go as far as to say that.
I wouldn't say they're hacks.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's very easy to hate on them because of the last few seasons, but they did like execute the first 5 or 6 well to a point where it was like the greatest show on television by far. Even if you watch like some scenes like now on like YouTube or something, you're like, oh my gosh, this was such a good show.
Yeah.
Like, holy crap, this was so good.
We'll never get anything like that.
We'll never get anything like that. And like I give them kudos to like get there. But
yeah.
Well, okay, we want to go to the Squid Game?
Yeah, I mean,
I don't think Squid Game is the next Game of Thrones.
it's I think it's created like as big of a splash as possible given this whole Netflix streaming environment now, right?
Yeah. So I won't give too much context into the show itself because I don't want to ruin it for people if you haven't seen it.
So I'm like in the middle of it. They just played that marble game.
The marble?
Yeah,
that's a shitty. I mean, that's a good episode, but it was like I almost cried. That was such a good episode.
Yeah, that was a good episode because like they lost a little bit of humanity. Like it was very, very clear. But that's where I'm up to. If you spoil anything else, I will Squid Game you.
Nope, I will not. Yeah.
But anyways,
Squid Game you.
I just think like why it was so good because your question was like how did this thing become so popular?
So that's right. That's the big question I want to know. And this is the first thing I think most of us in the industry, like, this is how we think about it, is because everybody in the industry wants a show like this. So naturally you want to know what happened to create this show that like, not even the show itself, more the impact that it had culturally, because this matters. Like I saw some data that said like not only did Squid Game, like, obviously it was a huge boost to like people going on Netflix, but it also boosted other shows on Netflix. So if you get one hit, that also keeps people on the platform be like, oh, I didn't realize Netflix had this show, and they go to that. So it actually, like, once you get people on the platform, it actually helps with everything else too.
Yeah.
So hits are huge.
There's two extremes to this. Either one, it was all this orchestrated plan that Netflix hatched up like maybe 2 or 3 years ago, because that's their development timeline, right? It takes like they're planning for things right now that they're expecting to come out in 2023, 2024.
Yeah.
So,
but that's not what happened.
Well, either they were that what's the word, clairvoyant, that they were able to predict this was gonna.
But Ted said that's not what happened.
Right. So, the other extreme is that it just happened to be something that is just one of the things that just randomly clicks, and
so that's what I want to know.
It resonated. Yeah.
But like, there's so many shows that are like good.
Well, so
like, that resonate. But
thought,
why this show?
When I was watching it, right, I was like, there's so many elements to this that make it such an ideal piece of IP, right? Like one of it, it's like it's quirky as fuck, right? Like I don't think I've seen anything like it. It's
very interesting.
It's like Battle Royale and like Hunger Games all like match into one, and there's like a Technicolor vibe to it, so like it's just strange looking.
Very interesting concept too. It's not like this won't spoil it too much, but like they're not really forced to do it. Like it's kind of actually all volunteer. So it's an interesting take on the games, as it's not like they're slaves to the game. It's actually they're there because they want to be there. Like they're willing to kill their die for money.
Yeah, it's like the extreme of like consumerism, capitalism. Like it's just like it's very relevant now. There's also like interesting representation in the show. It's Korean, and then there's like an Indian guy in it in the main cast that speaks fluent Korean, which was like I thut it was like pretty dope.
Interesting. Yeah.
Like it just has such a strange eclectic mix of things that that combination was just like really, it spoke to people, and the fact that like all the costumes and everything is very costumable.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a word.
I think like the Netflix was pretty quick. Honestly, I respect Netflix a lot for this because I know they didn't plan it. So like the fact that they were able to like, they basically like when this started to become popular, they're like, oh crap, we need to get this in e-com stores like now,
Yeah.
and they went quick.
I mean, I think they needed it,
It was
right?
perfect timing. Oh my gosh, for Halloween.
Their Q2 numbers with subscribers went down in the
good.
US. Like, shit was hitting the fan. And then all of a sudden, they started winning a bunch of Emmys.
Yep.
This came out. And then everyone's like, oh, okay. Well, Netflix is great again.
Yeah.
But I do wonder, though. Like, they've spent, 18 billion in content over the course of like a year or something like that. So something outrageous number, right? And then every year they probably have one or two, maybe three that really kind of like broke through the noise and just kind of like became super popular amongst a lot of people. That's still not a good hit rate.
No, yeah, the terrible
Right?
hit rate.
It's
HBO still has, I think, the best hit rate in terms of shows that are more universally viewed as good than Netflix does. Like,
Yeah.
Netflix is very, I think, hit or miss. And Netflix will always be like, oh, everybody asks us this question about whether a quality is good. That's stupid because everybody likes the same stuff. I'm like, well, if everyone's asking you that question, maybe it's because your stuff isn't that
Yeah.
great.
I
Like,
just
they're asking that question for a reason.
this
like,
is one of those situations where I'm like, you like fantastic job. This is great, but can you replicate? Like, what actually led it, and can you replicate?
So that's why I really want to understand it, because the fact is that, and we talked about this, is that like there's this idea that because Netflix has all this data about how people are watching and what people are watching, they're going to be able to predict and understand and manufacture hits with data.
Yeah.
And that's clearly not the case, because A, they didn't predict this show to be popular.
Yeah.
But B, this show is very different. It's very weird and it's very different, and it's also similar.
It was a risk. It was a risk that paid off.
Exactly. So like that's the thing is with shows, I like seeing stuff that I've never seen before that's weird and kooky and different and creative. I don't like seeing the same stuff I've seen, which means an algorithm telling me, well, if you liked this cooking show, you're also going to like this cooking show. I'm like, well, maybe I'm not in the mood for a cooking show now.
Can you
Like,
imagine?
I don't know.
If they had if they had a profile data that was like, this guy Jordan Washer has watched this shit before, and then I feel like he wants to watch like a Korean killing game show.
Yeah.
Like it's like
where the algorithm have we talked about this. Ted Swears like, oh, the algorithm is a better indicator of shows you'll like than your friends. It's
Yeah,
like, well,
no way.
Squid Game blew up because all my friends were talking about it, and
Exactly.
that's why I watched
Exactly,
it.
yeah.
So that's wrong, dude. Like, that's just incorrect. By your own platform proved you wrong.
I mean,
it's all about what my friends are watching and talking
there
about.
was no way that I would have been interested in this unless I heard it from everybody else.
Exactly. It's exponential. Like, I think it reaches a point in the zeitgeist where everyone's like, all right, and then it explodes.
Yeah.
Like, it just like blew up.
It's the FOMO threshold.
And I don't,
at some
honestly,
point there's that. Yeah.
So when did you first hear about it? I'm trying to track like the escalation of this show.
Yeah. I think I had a couple friends who mentioned it maybe like 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Interesting. Okay.
They kind of just like, oh, this new like Korean show on Squid Game like popped up, and I was like, it doesn't sound like something my speed. I'm not gonna watch it. And then like maybe a week ago, I started seeing memes about it, and I was like, all right, I gotta see what's up.
Yeah, I think that the memes are a good indicator of what's like actually popping off.
Yeah, no, for 100%.
In the culture, like it actually is.
100%. Yeah, when you see all the memes that you usually use, but they're all with one thing.
Yeah.
Like, that makes you, it hits the FOMO, right? Like, it hits the FOMO for everyone. They're like, okay, I have to understand what this meme means. Otherwise, I'm just a meme idiot.
Yep.
So I'm going to watch the show.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. Like, it's honestly an interesting case study. Now, so here's the thing. Like, to what I said before earlier, like, I wasn't sure if this type of popularity could be achieved on a streaming platform given the plethora of content. I honestly wasn't really sure if something could break through like this.
Yeah.
That did prove me wrong. However, we need to think about like so a lot of my argument is that the industry is changed to a point where like the next Harry Potter could be created or the next Sopranos couldn't be created just by the nature of the way the business is going. And I'm still not necessarily convinced that Squid Game will become like this big cultural phenomenon that we'll be talking about in 5 years, let alone like Back to the Future that we're still talking about, you know, like the big franchises, like that we still talk about to this day, and people will be talking about Harry Potter, they'll be talking about Lord of the Rings 20 years from now. I'm not. It depends what happens. I mean, it's only one episode. I mean, one season. Maybe it goes into 8 seasons that are great.
I think it'll depend I think
you
it'll
know?
depend on what the show ends up achieving, right? So like The Sopranos was like it created a legacy because it was about like it was a mafia show, and it kicked off a series of anti-hero tropes, right? And it started with Sopranos, like Breaking Bad after that. So like it achieved something, right? Like it kicked off this whole process of like anti-hero and protagonist.
Right.
So if technically speaking this has achieved something new, then sure, it'll last, right? But right now it's just a great show that everyone watches. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that has achieved
We'll
anything other
see.
than other than the numbers, right?
Right. So,
So-
I guess there's two natural questions. So the first one is, for Netflix, like, does this prove them right or does this prove them wrong in their strategy? Because on one hand, it proves them right that their strategy has created a hit.
Mm-hmm.
It proves them wrong in the fact that it took like $8 billion to get one hit.
No, and
Which is like more of like you just had like a dartboard over there and you had like 500 darts. So yeah, you'll hit the bullseye
So,
eventually.
I don't-
But like you really need 500?
I don't consider it like their goal if it was random, right? Like, so the only reason, and I was reading up on this earlier, an article pointed out that like they invested $1 billion in local content in Korea to develop local content, and this arise as a part of that.
Right.
So what they did was understand that the value in it now is international. So let's invest in content internationally.
Right.
But it wasn't like Netflix as we know it in the U.S. that was like this is gonna take off. They just were they invested in the right place that enabled that to happen, right?
So it's kind of both.
It's kind of both. Yeah, I think so. Like it was directionally and strategically they made the right choice. Whether or not it was because of them, that has yet to be.
Well, that's another thing, right? Like if it was on HBO Max, like first of all, it wouldn't have been on HBO Max because HBO Max isn't making production in Korea.
Yeah.
But if it was, like, it would it have enough reach? Probably not. So like, there's also that aspect. One thing I do want to talk about though, which is interesting, is basically people have said that like Netflix is kind of revolutionary in the fact that it's connecting us all globally. It's basically trying to think of the right word for it, but it's basically internationalized movies and television.
Yep.
Where like
Yep.
stuff from other countries is coming to the United States. Stuff from the United States is going to other countries.
Yep.
It's all like one ecosystem of movies and television that everybody in the world has, which has never been done before. It used to be, the only foreign content that the United States would get would be like, I don't know, not much.
One or two things that you'd watch with subtitles, like
Right.
once or twice
Honestly,
a year.
anime might have been the first big like thing to come out that like
Yeah.
was influenced by any other culture that wasn't the
No,
United States.
I think-
when
I
Dragon
mean-
Ball and like Pokemon came out.
Yeah, that's
Like-
commendable about what Netflix has done, right? They just created the platform for all kinds of content.
So you gotta give them kudos for that.
I do think it's causing like a shift too, where it's like the U.S. is not always going to be the dominant player in creating content anymore,
Yeah.
right? Like Parasite won the Oscar last year.
Yep.
Now we have this. Like Korea is like emerging as like a pretty big powerhouse, and like I think what they've done is like now that there's investment in these different regions,
Yep.
it's no longer always going to be like U.S. Hollywood. At some point, it's going to
Right.
be like pretty much spread out.
Well, so and that's really good. I think for the world, like that we're all
Yeah.
consuming each other's. Like I think that's really awesome. One thing I'm
Yeah.
intrigued by though is that like the United States films and movies used to influence other cultures. Like when Friends and Seinfeld, like people know all over the world and they love
Yeah.
that show. And the
Yeah.
movies too, like Will Smith.
How they learn English,
like,
basically.
yeah.
With their friends. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a huge thing. And now you'll see that some of the biggest hits in the United States are foreign, like Parasite and like
Money Heist.
Money Heist.
Squid
Like
Game.
a lot of these shows that are really breaking out in the United States are actually based out of other countries. Now, I find that interesting because content is basically a reflection on our culture. Like the stuff that's created is usually based on the creativity that's coming from culture. And I wonder if that is maybe because the United States is like in a pretty, well, politically it's not a great place, but like from a like in terms of how prosperous we are as a nation. Like we're actually, we're obviously very developed and we have a good life. So maybe that actually, like creativity, I feel like usually comes from hardship. Sometimes, like J.K. Rowling was like pretty much like almost homeless when she wrote Harry Potter. So I don't know how like the poverty, like what's the situation in South Korea, but a lot of that is class thing.
Yeah.
So when there's these giant class divides, so maybe great stories are coming from this class divide and it's creating this like insanely interesting type content because people are being creative there due to hardship, which is interesting. I don't know. It's not like good or bad in any way. It's just like interesting of like how the United States culture.
Korea and the U.S. are suffering from the same kinds of class division problems. That's probably why it traveled so well.
It's kind of hitting.
Yeah, it's hitting like a nerve in both regions. But that's a good thing, right? And that means we're seeing that there's commonalities in different regions, and that's what's causing interest in content. So
I do wonder. And I don't want to do it for too long, sorry. But I do wonder if there's something to be said about like international culture influencing the United States more than the United States influencing other cultures, which is different than it used to be.
I still think we're like decades away from that. Like it's.
What do you mean? Decades away from like the United States not doing it? Because
I think the state of the entertainment influence is going to remain in the U.S.'s court for a long time, but there are some regions that I think are like getting close in the influence. Like Korea, I think is getting very close, right? Like
dude,
just look at how
K-pop is blowing up in the United States.
Like it's becoming a lot more.
What are they doing over there? Like it's so popular everywhere.
It's actually funny. Like they're in Korea. There's a whole generation of kids that just want to be like pop stars and actors and idols and those kinds of things, that it's becoming a problem, and the government is trying to get people to like be doctors and lawyers.
That's really funny.
That's kind of a thing. But I mean, that's just by virtue of their entertainment business being such a great export.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think they're getting pretty close to that level of influence. So I think what you're mentioning is like that's inevitability at some point. But I still think it's a little far away.
Yeah. I don't know. It'll be interesting. Like, also, you have China basically not allowing a lot of U.S. movies into their country now, which is an interesting trend. And that's really a huge problem for studios because that justified making a lot of movies. And now if you don't have the Chinese market, like a lot of movies they wouldn't have made without the Chinese market aren't going to be made.
Yeah, I have my own issues with that model, just because like
the model of like making movies for the Chinese audience.
No, the catering to a Chinese audience or getting access to a Chinese audience means that there has to be some creative aspects that must be changed in film.
Yeah, but how do you fix it though? Like if you're a studio executive and you want to make the most money possible, or sometimes even make money, like get in the black, you need China. You need China, or you like literally will it will lose money.
There's a way to do it that seems artistically in sync, but the problem is most of the time I've seen it. So I just bring up like The Meg as the perfect example of this. It's a pretty like non-political movie, but in order to gain access,
it's about a giant shark, isn't it?
But to gain access to the Chinese market, they basically added characters in that were famous from China.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
They stick out as like a sore thumb. Because
it doesn't feel natural.
It doesn't feel natural, right? Like I'm sure there are stories where it might require some sort of a cross-country collaboration. And, like there's a way to do it, and some movies have done it well.
Yeah.
But the ones that do end up making it, like you just notice it. And it just takes you out of the theatrical experience. And I think that's like what they still haven't figured out yet.
I guess so, but there are also movies like Titanic did well. I mean, there are some movies that do really well in like China that they're like anything. Like they're just kind of the story, and that's it. You know. Sometimes I remember there was a Pixar movie where like they put some weird topping on a pizza because people in China, like it was something about like pineapples on pizza isn't weird in China. So like, but the movie. Like they made it weird that pineapples were on pizza, so they changed it to like squid or something. I don't remember exactly what they did. They've always changed things like a little bit to cater to the Chinese market.
Yeah, no, this censorship.
That's a little bit much.
Yeah.
Well, China is cracking down, which I think is very interesting and a trend that we should stay on top of because that could have some pretty big ramifications as China like really is like we don't want any American movies anymore.
Yeah.
That would be
I mean, that'll
disastrous.
definitely factor into trade wars and whatnot and shit. Like,
yeah.
That's a whole different beast.
Yeah. That would be
probably don't want to even get into that.
it would be a long topic. It would be a long discussion.
Yeah.
But we'll see. We'll see.
So you watched Free Guy.
Last one. Free Guy. Free Guy actually I think did go to the Chinese market.
Yeah. I mean, okay, that has a gaming arm to it, and you know how many people game in China? Billions. So.
Well, I forget who. I wanted to see who actually wrote it, but first of all, I thought it was great. I thought it was genius, honestly.
Yeah.
Really, really smart, like really funny.
I should not talk spoilers, but the big reveal at the end was just like it was so well written. I just thought it was amazing.
Yeah.
Probably my favorite movie of 2021 so far.
I think it might be mine too, to be honest. Because the thing is, like, I try to preach this as much as I can, and the studios don't really get this. And the reason why, like, I was kind of hesitant on the Game of Thrones prequel is like they think their audiences are stupid enough where they won't go to see original stuff, and so they're like, all right, we'll make Space Jam a new legacy, or like they'll make these remakes and sequels because they're like, oh, well, that's what people go to, and it's like, yes, that's what they go to, but like audiences will invest if you give them good, unique, and interesting things like Squid Game, like Free Guy. They will go out and see it. You need to have confidence in your audience. They're willing to take a risk. They're willing to take risks on original stuff, and if it works, it will be huge for you. And like Free Guy is one of the things I can absolutely see potentially being like a franchise. Could be a couple different movies that people will go out to see and that will grow in popularity over time because it's original. There's room to grow in the story. It's great and it's modern too. Like it like reflects the modern time versus like with Space Jam is a good example. Like they had to adjust the old theme to the new world, and it was like almost too much. Like that movie was just like the worst thing I've ever seen. But
that like Ben and what was it? Tom and Jerry came out around the same time.
Those are, like, Tom and Jerry
Max movies that I was like, I'm not gonna watch that.
Yeah, and it's like they're just relying on their existing IP instead of trying to create new IP.
Yeah,
which is the beauty of Free Guy. Now, one of the things I do want to talk about Free Guy is I have also been concerned that star power is losing its power in that like there's not a lot of actors these days that could really convince me to go to the movies like by themselves. Like it used to be any big like I mean there were so many like Tom Cruise, Leonardo DiCaprio, Tom Hanks. Like there were a lot of actors and actresses that like them alone would be like, yeah, I'm gonna go see this movie.
Yeah.
And now they're all doing TV, which is fine. Like TV's gotten a lot better, so I get it. But at the same time, if they're like, oh yeah, but I'm gonna be in the movie theater too, you're like, well, I could see you on the TV screen. Like it's fine. There were some actors that I literally couldn't see them on my TV at home. They were that good. It was like this and they were. Because the good actors make a lot more money in movies. So like the better actors were in movies. But anyway, just to go like, do you think that star power still exists in movies?
I think the industry is trying to change purposefully to remove the power of stars.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Because think about it. Like you're paying exorbitant amounts for talent.
Well, yeah, but they if they can bring people to the movie theaters, that's like a huge bonus for you. You convince people to go to the movie theaters. That's how you get your most money.
Okay, so I'm one of those guys that like if I watch a movie and I see like Nicolas Cage in every movie, I'm just gonna be thinking, oh, that's Nicolas Cage, and I actually prefer to see new people in new roles.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just a general thing. Like, even as I was a kid, I always wondered, like, oh, why do they have the same actors do all these roles? Because I know it's an actor because I've seen him in multiple movies. So that actually took away from my like viewing experience. So I've always had this mindset of like it should be different actors and whatnot. But I think that like good actors are everywhere, and there's so many people you can find them.
Amazing actors everywhere.
Yeah, and so you don't have to get you don't have to pay top dollar to get the best. because there's talented people elsewhere. And I think that's what Netflix is trying to do, right? They're trying to commoditize talent, right? They have these little incubators around the U.S. right now where they basically hire local talent and they're up and comers. So that's why a lot of their series don't even have stars in them. Right?
Yeah.
They make stars, but they don't start with stars. And that business model is a lot more cost effective, right? Like they're using
true.
the talent,
Yeah.
but they don't have to shell out so much like above the line.
Right.
So I think like Netflix and some of these other like technology media companies are probably purposefully trying to do that. They're trying to remove the power away from like
They are
stars.
signing a bunch of stars. Like you had The Rock, Gal Gadot, and Ryan Reynolds in one movie.
Yeah.
For Netflix. And the new Adam McKay movie is coming out
That's
on
true. And they
Netflix
have,
with
like, these
Leo
massive-
and Jennifer Lawrence.
Yeah.
So I think they are leaning into it a little bit because they draw audiences.
Yeah.
Like stars, like real stars, do draw audiences not only in theaters but also to like watch those movies on their platforms.
Yeah.
So they probably want a certain level of stardom because it attracts people. If all the actors and the actors are the same and they're all unknowns, then that might not drive people to go watch. So you kind of want stars.
The stars are a marketing vehicle, right?
100%. 100%. If you saw like a green lighting model and they're like Will Smith is in it, you're going to give it like a 3 times premium on the box office.
Right. But what company doesn't invest in marketing at all?
Doesn't?
Yeah, or rarely invests in marketing for their product.
No, Netflix invests a lot of money in their marketing.
In their content.
Yeah.
But not in the product itself. So what I guess what I'm saying is
like Netflix is a streaming service?
Yeah, as in their marketing isn't going to be to acquire customers. Their marketing is to promote content. But
Yeah.
if you already have so many million subscribers, you don't have to push Netflix to
You're not pushing the platform, but if you push
Yeah.
the content, you're pushing Netflix. I mean, because people know what Netflix is. So you don't really need to advertise Netflix as a streaming platform like Peacock does. If you push out like a TV show, and it's on Netflix, everyone's gonna be like, "What is Netflix?" And everybody knows what Netflix is.
Yeah.
You don't need to advertise Netflix.
I don't.
You need to
I
advertise
feel like
on Netflix.
Okay, I haven't looked into the numbers, but I bet you their marketing spend per content is probably the lowest out of
It
most of the
might
studios.
be, although they bought like every billboard on Sunset. If you go to Sunset, like literally, it's like every billboard
That's
is
true.
Netflix, and you're like, "Jeez." And I think they do spend a lot of money on like trying to get awards because that's helpful for them to attract talent and some people too. But to go back to the stars thing, what's interesting is I'm not sure if stars exist anymore, and if they do. So if you're saying like Ryan Reynolds, The Rock, maybe Leo, Tom Cruise, the only reason I say maybe to Leo is because he's doing Netflix, and I'm salty with him about it. He shouldn't have done that, but. Leo's one of those people that like I could see him in a bunch of different roles and he transforms. Same with like Robert De Niro back in the day. There are actors that can transform into different people and like are actually so good at acting. You sit there and you're like, this is like an artist.
Yeah.
There are some scenes in like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood that Leo did where I'm just like, this man is a genius. Like he's so good. Like he's totally transformed. So I disagree with you a little bit on like. If the actor's there, like your body can't wrap it around that he's a different person. Because I've definitely with certain actors though, I need to specify it's only like Liam Neeson. No way, Liam Neeson is the same in every movie he's in. Will Smith, the same in every movie he's in. Nicholas, actually no, I totally disagree with that, dude.
He has range.
Nicolas Cage has so much fucking range. Don't you dare say that again. Nicolas Cage, absolutely not. He's the epitome of an actor that can transform at a whim.
Triggered.
I was triggered there. How dare you? You gotta watch more Nicolas Cage movies. You think it's Nicolas Cage in the same movie?
I gotta watch that jujitsu movie.
Yeah, you do. But there are some actors that just are them. Morgan Freeman is like he's just the same. He's just Morgan Freeman.
I guess
he's likable.
From my perspective, like I think acting, it's obviously a talent, but
yeah, dude.
I think people can like develop like any other skill or talent. Everyone has a certain level of skill, a certain level of talent they can exercise and practice. I just feel like
true, but that's
they're
like
more marketing tools than they are necessary for the movie. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
As in, like, someone else could play that part, except they just need a star because they need it to sell. But that doesn't mean that functionally someone else can play that part.
I agree.
Yeah.
I do agree.
And I guess like I guess we're arguing two different things then, right? Like it's like one is like you need the star and the marketing to ensure success. But we're also talking about like the practicality of just getting an actor who's good enough.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's also two different type of stars. Like I think there are two different types of like movie stars. There are the movie stars that are just themselves are so likable and everybody loves them in movies and they're good at acting like themselves in different situations that it doesn't matter and they become movie stars because of that. That's like The Rock. That's
Ryan
Kevin
Reynolds.
Hart. That's Ryan Reynolds. Like those people, like everybody loves them so much and they're really funny or they're really kooky or they're really good looking. Like Harrison Ford's another example. Doesn't really have that much range, but like he's just himself in these movies and people are like, he's a good looking, like macho dude. Like I love this guy. Sylvester Stallone. Like these guys, jeez, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like those people are like Bruce Willis. Like they're not necessarily good actors in the sense that they're changing who they are, like Christian Bale, but they are so like likable as people that people will go out to see them, just see that actor in different situations. Then you have the actors like Leo or Christian Bale or Gary Oldman or Robert De Niro that like completely change who they are as people. And people and audiences go to see that because they're like, this actor is so like they are actually like the LeBron James of acting. Like to your point, like right, it's like certain like you can work on it, you can become pretty good, but like nobody could ever be LeBron James if they just worked hard enough.
I think
Leo has like a distinct Leo and like Robert De Niro. Some of those. I think
you're alluding
Al Pacino.
You're alluding to the uniqueness of their talent. So there's like those that are good at what they do, and there's those that are like a unique talent. Like, do you know what I mean? Like
yes, like I don't think The Rock is a unique talent in the fact that he's like amazing at acting and he's changed the acting like as a profession, but him himself is very appealing to a mass audience.
He's just good at what he does. Yeah, and that happens to be acting and promoting.
Yeah, and he's worked on it. He's I'm sure he's gotten better at acting over time. But like his acting is not the art; it's just the commercial, which is totally fine. Like that works. But then
I agree with that.
Yeah,
I agree with that. I mean, huge tangent, but I do agree with that. And I think I would recommend Free Guy as like a perfect example of like someone who is typically typecast but does an excellent job. Yeah. In this particular situation.
He is very, very good. Yeah. And I really like appreciated the story. Like I thought it was very unique, very relevant for like this day and age. Like dude, Taika Waititi is
Taika Waititi.
I always mess up his name. So
the
funny,
New Zealander.
Dude. Yeah, he's so funny, man. Yeah. Like it's just it was just overall it was a phenomenal movie. Yeah, I don't know. It's just very good. But it did get me thinking about, like, star power. Like, if Ryan Reynolds wasn't in this, would I like it as much? Would I have seen it? Probably, if I got, like, enough people to recommend it to me.
Yeah.
Could somebody have done that role as well? I don't know. But then...
dude. Sorry, I just, like, randomly thought of something. So I was going to dress up as Guy for Halloween.
That's really funny. Yeah.
But I should probably just dress up as Dude from the movie.
Oh my gosh!
The buff version.
The buff version.
Guy.
You totally could.
Yeah, just take off my shirt.
That'd be, dude! If you got your twin, dude, you should get your twin, dude.
We should have Dude version and then the Guy version.
Dude, that'd be amazing. Actually, it'd be really funny.
Oh
man. Yeah, really good. Highly recommend if you guys haven't seen it.
Yeah. Go out and support theaters. Go out and watch it while you still can.
I know we're running a little over. But the last question I just need to ask is maybe it's too long of a topic. Maybe we can talk about it next time. But
yeah,
I've always thought about like, can new movie stars like a Ryan Reynolds, like The Rock, like Will Smith, can they be created today? Like, can something break out to a hit where like those like for example, like when Star Wars came out, like those three actors blew up. Like they were like the most hot in demand actors. Like everybody wanted them and everything.
Fizzled.
And then, well, eventually over time, but it took a long time. Harrison Ford was like,
oh, I thought you were talking about Daisy Ridley and like.
No,
I thought you were talking about them, as in like they blew up, but they didn't really.
No, I mean they blew up because they were in Star Wars, not
Yeah.
because ugh. No. I'm talking about
I
like
don't
I'm
know.
talking about like can new stars get created like to that point, right? Like when that Star Wars movie came out, they like those three actors, Han, Luke, and Leia, they blew up. Harrison Ford was in Indiana Jones, and Mark Hamill actually had a really good
Voice
acting career,
Yeah.
and he just embraced that he was just going to be synonymous with Luke Skywalker for the rest of his life, and I
Yeah.
actually really respect him for that move. But like they were instant movie stars, and like Hollywood was in the business of creating movie stars, and now it feels like the movie stars we have left are the only ones. Like I don't know any young people that are coming out that have that level of movie stardom. Like when Tom Cruise was like 25, he had this.
So I
don't see it. Tom
I don't
Holland?
know if I can. I don't know if I can properly answer this question, but I will say like there are probably a few exceptions, like Tom Holland.
Tom Holland. What's his Timothy Chalamet is kind of coming out to be that guy.
You know what it could be. We might just be getting older, so that we're not aware.
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I trust me, I've thought about this, but it's not because think about it. When Leo was in Titanic when he was like 22,
Yeah,
and he blew up. He was a huge star when he was after Titanic. People knew that. He was in People magazine. Like people were talking about him, but I don't know any young actors and actresses that are blowing up the way they did, like Julia Roberts after.
Oh, you know why? You know why?
After that strip. Whoa.
Aaron Brockovich.
Pretty Woman.
Yeah. I
like
think,
Julia Roberts after that. Like people aren't blowing up.
do you know
because-
why? It's because they're on TikTok and YouTube and shit now. Right? Like those are the ones who are blowing up.
Oh, those yes. Oh, you mean the new stars
I'm
are
just-
basically the ones on TikTok.
Yeah, I'm just saying
yes.
we're just being replaced with some different medium.
And then we can get in the whole.
Yeah.
Then we can get in the whole conversation of whether movies and
we-
television are just being replaced by video
Yeah.
games and social media now.
Let's put a pin in that
We'll
one.
put a pin in that one
was-
for later.
That was a long one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So, anything you're watching? I guess this is Sunday, so we get
Well, I
maybe
gotta-
on our next episode.
I got to finish Squid Game.
Yeah.
Obviously a recommendation. And I will say the Sopranos prequel movie
yeah.
is good. It's even better if you have.
Wait, it's a
watched
movie?
Yeah, it's a movie.
Oh, I thought it was a series.
No. It doesn't require that much commitment, man. It's a 2-hour movie. Yeah.
I didn't know that. Oh, I'd be down to check that
I
out.
think it's worth watching. Just the fact that the lead is the son of the actor who played the main character in The Sopranos. So it's just
that's cool.
It's kind of a cool continuation type thing.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, I recommend it. I'd give it like a solid like 8.72.
8.72.
8.72. And if you
Two
watched
digits.
it, a 9.01.
If you watch Sopranos.
Yeah, if you watch Sopranos, so you a little extra
Interesting.
appreciation. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I recommend it. It's good.
All right. I've been telling myself I want to watch The Sopranos for a long time. It's just like, it's so overwhelming because it's
Just-
such a time commitment.
Honestly, the only time I do watch it is when I'm folding laundry on a Sunday. I'll watch a new episode.
Of Sopranos?
That's
really?
literally how I do it because
Interesting.
I don't have that much time
Can
during
you
the
focus
day.
though? Like, do you know what's going on?
I just leave it there, yeah, and I'm just kind of like absent-mindedly,
listening.
yeah, while folding my laundry.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
go through one episode a week, and that's how I get through it.
Interesting. That'll
Yeah.
take you forever.
Yeah, it's taking me a while, but I'm getting there.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's one of the best shows ever created, apparently.
Yeah,
And I believe people because it's like universally known. But
yeah.
I don't know.
Anyways,
Yeah.
so we'll sync up on Wednesday.
Think about Wednesday. All right,
All right.
guys. Thanks
Thanks
for
for-
tuning in.
Later.
Peace.